So welcome to another episode from Solution. My name's Jay. This is Brendon. We figured it's prudent that we just tell you a little bit more about our own journeys. So Brendon has volunteered to go first. Thank you. Thank you for your service, dude, and thank you for the part you played in my recovery. Thank you for being vulnerable on an open platform to share your story. I think there's a lot of value in it. So. Yeah, what can you tell us?
So, my journey started in 2016, where I was court appointed into rehab. And the scary thing for me was that, I was court appointed. It was either spending the next 5 years in prison or going to rehab. And obviously, I chose the rehab. We are in South Africa. South African prisons aren't very nice. Some of you must know it. But it started in 2016. I arrived at a rehab, a nice cushy rehab, which I was fortunate enough that my family paid for. So I went to a nice fancy cushy rehab. Not many people have that luxury, which I was very fortunate. But at the time, it didn't seem like I wasn't grateful or appreciative of what I was actually getting. I think an important thing for me to state is that, I didn't want to get clean, even though no matter what sort of consequences that I had been through or received, there was no ways that I wanted to stay clean and get clean. I had resided to the fact that I was always going to be an addict, and it took me a while through the rehabilitation process for me to actually accept, maybe I can do this. And the thing that happened for me was I always thought I was the worst drug addict in the world. No one was worse than me. No one had it as bad as me. No one had been dealt the shitty life cards that I'd been dealt. And I realized with these great people that do H&R service, which H&R service is hospitals and institutions, people from the fellowships, either from AA, NA, CA, come to rehabs and share their stories and their experience, strength and hope, their hope, faith and courage, whatever it may be. And a guy came in and he shared his story, and it made my story look like I'd been to Disneyland. And it gave me hope. And it realized that maybe I can do this. So a huge part of my early recovery was these people who came and shared at the treatment facility, and they did an amazing job, and I'm forever grateful to those people who still continue to do hospitals and institution service and come to places and rehabs and prisons, the guys who do the prison service, amazing. That was my first exposure to NA, was these guys who came and did prison service. And at the time, I was totally not interested until they mentioned the word sponsorship. And I was like, oh shit, maybe these guys can give me some cash to pay all my So I approached the guy and said, so apparently you do sponsorship. You only handed me a step working guide. What am I going to do with this? But it took me a while to actually get into the process. And a huge part of that was the fellowships and the people who do the service in the fellowships. I'm eternally grateful to all of you who do that.
So you said your story relative to the guys whose share you heard was made it look like it was like Disneyland.
Yeah, it was like a picnic bar.
So tell us about Disneyland. What was Disneyland like?
So my story is short. From the age of 13 till the age of 41, I cannot remember a single day that I was clean and sober. So like I said in the previous video, I think I spent close on 3 decades in addiction, and I can't remember one day sober and all of that. It was like my identity. And I grew up in a time when drugs and alcohol were perceived as cool.
Hey.
All my favorite musicians, like the Charles and like the Jim Morrisons and the writers, the Charles Bukowskis and the Tom Waits and all those sort of people, like, sure, they were miserable, but there was some sort of like coolness in their misery. And I wanted to be part of that, you know, and it looked very attractive at the time. Yeah, but Disneyland wasn't really Disneyland. You know, my journey always ends up in the same place, and that's in a prison cell with a needle in my arm and one flip-flop. You know, I share this often. It's like I lose a flip-flop every time.
So wasn't it the flip or the flop? Probably the flop, right?
Yeah. Probably the flop. Yeah. I always end up in a prison cell, no matter. So, like, I've always loved the concept of playing the movie through the end. It's helped me in my journey and the Just for Today part. Those have been like important aspects to my recovery. So if I feel like I can pick up and use or whatever it may be, I just play that movie to the end and I know where it's going to end up.
No.
You know, Einstein shares that, like, what's the story on
Insanity?
Yeah, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Mine was a different experience, and insanity was doing the same thing over and over again, knowing the result, but doing it anyway. Yeah. Like expecting a different result, there's a little bit of hope in there. There was no hope in mine, you know what I mean? It always ended up the same way. So my theory on insanity is like always ending up in the same place and doing it anyway. Like I would hurt myself to such an extent that I was completely, I don't like the word broken, but completely defeated. And as soon as I felt a little bit better, I would be back there doing the same thing and ending up in the same place and not learning from the experience, or maybe learning a little bit each and every time, a small amount, but not changing anything and ending up in the same place and wondering why I was ending up in the same place, but I didn't change anything. Also, the thought of thinking, oh, I've got this, I can handle it, this time's going to be different. All those things went through my mind. And I think they often talk about it in the big book. I'm not going to do this a lot, I promise. I hate the people who say it. And the book tells us.
Yeah.
The crazy part of alcoholism or drug addiction is not the consequences and all the crazy things that happened. The craziest part of it is that, like, thinking I can do it again and handle it. I've worked in this industry for the last 7 years, which has been an amazing journey and given me purpose. I love helping others through their recovery. And in doing that, I've learned that, like, anyone who thinks they can handle it or try and do it again, I have seen people who successfully, you know, they come in for one addiction and they can successfully have 1 or 2 drinks and do that sort of thing. It's a very minimum amount of people. I would say like maybe 2-3% of what I've seen. And the people who think they can actually maybe handle this, I'm not one of those people. So I try my best just for today that I'm not going to pick up and use.
So can I just interrupt you and break your train of thought? So we're kind of admonished to complete abstinence. And I think, as far as substance abuse and alcohol goes, we both kind of stayed steadfast in that journey. But I recognize for myself, for example, that I still have addiction in my life, whether that be through social media or whatever. So, addiction is a very broad term. I mean, I think our shares here pertain specifically to substance abuse and alcohol. Same thing. This is what we're talking about, but addiction is a much bigger topic. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
Don't worry. No, I think it's important to understand that, like, I think everyone's addicted to something, but there are healthy addictions. But I think the most important thing when it comes to addiction is like the consequences of my addiction. So if I'm addicted to exercise and I don't spend time with my wife or my kids or whatever it may be, then like there are consequences to my addiction, you know. But there are, I do believe there are healthy addictions, you know. And I do believe, although then it's not an addiction, maybe. You know, in the beginning, it was more like experimental, like using drugs and seeing where they take me and searching for some sort of spiritual solution. A lot of my drug intake was about that. And then it became escape. And it wasn't healthy. And there were severe consequences to my using. And if there weren't any consequences, and there's some people who can use without any consequences, then I don't know if that is addiction. Not like, I don't think anyone can identify what addiction actually is. If you put like the best experts in a room about and discuss addiction, like people who have been studying it for years and years and years, there's always an argument and no one can settle on one specific thing. So I think it is what it is for you. And for me, my rock bottom wasn't sitting in a prison cell or crying every night, shooting up regardless of if I would I'd sit shooting up with tears streaming down my face, wishing I could just stop this. That wasn't my rock bottom. My rock bottom, I feel, and I think it was when I looked in the mirror and I hated who I'd become. And that was rock bottom for me. So, yeah. Thanks, so.
So, brother, thank you so much. Yeah, it's I think there's so much value in people sharing their stories. I think often the process of addiction ultimately leaves us in a place of isolation, loneliness, and I think it's just worth hearing that there are other people who can relate to either where you've been or where you are. And I think, so you mentioned bumper stickers. The therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel, is definitely one of those very valuable jargon sayings. So thank you for sharing. So good. I really appreciate it. I guess this means it's my turn. If you've enjoyed Brendon's share, if you want to hear more about what goes, got to say, hit the like button, maybe hit the subscribe button if you see fit, and check out the link at the end of this video to hear more about who I am. Thank you for watching. Check you next time.